Welcome to Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, the podcast that deals with all things mental health. We talk to professionals, survivors, and loved ones about their sometimes informative, sometimes uplifting, and sometimes tragic stories. I'm your host of the show, Todd Rennebaum, advocate, recovering addict, experienced sufferer of depression and anxiety, and author of the children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. Hello, I am Todd Rennebaum. This is Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, and you're listening to it on the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening. If it's your first time, a millionth time, whatever, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for telling people about it. Thank you for leaving reviews and ratings. And thank you for reaching out to me, so many people, this last week. And last weekend, on Sunday, Mother's Day, I spent the day and the next day and that night in the hospital. I had a very strong panic attack and was having, thoughts of harming myself in the way that it's scary. Panic attacks are scary, and it's hard to explain. But anyway, so many people reached out and said so many wonderful things. So thank you. Yes, I'm trying not to get emotional, but anyway, thank you so much for that. I really, 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 really appreciate all the kind words, all the love. It's overwhelming. So thank you very much. And I especially want to give a quick thank you to the staff of the Indian Head Union Hospital, the nurses and the doctors that I saw. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Dr. Babani. Thank you, Dr. Z. I very, very, very much appreciate it. That's one thing about living in a small town and going to a small town hospital. People know you, people care, and they spend time with you, and they have empathy, and yeah, that's something I wouldn't get in a big city, and I know that for a fact. So not that people don't want to give it to me in the city, it's just they're just unable to. So yes, thank you. Speaking of my social media, you can follow me on Instagram. That's kind of where I'm most active, at Bunny Hugs Podcast. Now next week, I'm going to be speaking with a really great guy. His name's Rodney Norman. I can almost guarantee you've seen him and you've heard him. He's a crazy white-haired guy with big white beard. He kind of does motivational videos, and you see him on social media and stuff. And his videos have been shared and viewed many, many millions of times. Just to give you a taste, or a reminder of who he is, I'll play you a quick clip.
Hello and welcome to today. I take this opportunity to say that if you're seeing this video, it means that you're still alive, and so you can still do stuff.
So yes, that guy. I'm speaking with him. Turns out he's a stand-up comedian, and that's a character he created. I wasn't sure. I was like, is that just a really weird guy, or what's going on there? But anyway, and I'm going to talk to him about his ideas about doing motivational videos and stuff. So yeah, that's next week. This week, I'm speaking with Katie Herzog, and she was before cancel culture was before you were quote unquote canceled, she was somewhat canceled. Life turned out pretty good for her anyway. It was a very small group of people trying to cancel her, and it didn't quite take. She's a journalist, and she worked for the Seattle paper The Stranger. She's also done other works for BuzzFeed, The Guardian, and The Atlantic. She has a very popular podcast called Blocked and Reported. And how it all started is she wrote an article. She's a queer lady. She wrote an article for The Stranger It's about trans people, and it was about trans people that have transitioned and then retransitioned or detransitioned. I can't remember. Some people didn't like that. She wrote that article. But anyway, I've read the article. It's a very great article. It's not, I don't know. It's just an article. I don't know. There was nothing too crazy about it. But yet, a very, very small group of people with very, very loud voices tried to cancel her. Near the end of the interview, closer to the end, it gets a little political because that's kind of what our podcast is all about. So, yeah, I really tried not to get political, but it kind of went that way. She's super funny, super great lady. She may have views that you don't agree with. She has views that I don't necessarily agree with, but, I still thought it was important to talk to someone that's in the public eye, that's been canceled, and kind of how that feels and what that looks like for your mental health and stuff. So, enjoy the interview. So without further ado, I give you Katie Herzog.
Yeah, I got started in journalism sort of late in life. I was working in publishing, sort of a mid-level publishing house, doing sales, data entry, stuff like that. I was terrible at it. Copy editing, also bad at that. And I had some like weird things happen in my personal life. Basically, I got dumped, and I decided that I would. The person who dumped me worked in media, and I was always sort of jealous of that. And I thought, I'm going to get back at her by becoming a successful journalist. And so I quit my job at the age of 30, and I did an unpaid internship in public radio. I am not more successful for her, unfortunately. She produces a podcast for, I think, Barack Obama or something like that. So I'm not more successful than her. So that was really my start. Was I took some personal animus. I was motivated by
spite.
By spite, yeah. Like most things in the world. And so that sort of started it. I got an unpaid internship, and then I got a job after that, and then I got another job, and then I got another job, and then I lost that job thanks to COVID, and I started a podcast. And that sort of brings us to where we are now. But yeah, spite was, as always, the motivating factor in my life.
So what did you do up until the age 30?
I partied. I drank a lot. I was a barfly. I had probably like 3 or 4 jobs a year because I would get fired from one, and then I would get another one, and then I would get fired from that. I mean, my resume is not worth paper. It's terrible. I basically was a fuck up. I still am in some ways, but now I'm just one with a lot of Twitter followers. I studied creative writing in college. I did a little bit of freelance writing, but I never took it seriously. And mostly I would just have a job, get fired, get a new one, then go drink my woes away.
Do you happen to have ADHD?
I don't know. I'm sort of an ADHD truther in the sense that I think it's like vastly overdiagnosed. So I don't know. So I don't know if I even believe in ADHD. I'm not sure if it's a disorder or just a normal human variation.
Well, I just found out today I'm getting funding to be able to take the assessment.
Nice. I have done the assessment, and I have faked ADHD because I wanted to get the pills. So I did do that. So I guess technically I do. Somewhere on my permanent record, there is a little note that says, was prescribed Adderall. I definitely didn't do it because I wanted to concentrate. Good luck on the assessment.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel the same way. I think it's overdiagnosed and whatnot too, but the assessment is actually it's like an in-depth, it's like an 8-hour process. Oh, wow. It's not like, talk to a doctor for half an hour. So I'll feel pretty good.
Yeah, that was not my experience. I just went to a doctor and I said, "Hey, I have ADHD," and they believed me. So
I tried that and it would work. So I actually feel better that I'm going this route anyway. But
yeah.
And actually, my son is going into pre-journalism in the fall. So maybe he should get canceled.
Yeah. I mean, probably not at this stage. You want to at least be established before you get canceled.
Well,
getting canceled before you're established, that won't help them at all.
Do you think you were well established before you got canceled?
No, that's a good point. I wasn't well, but I had jobs. I
Right.
had
Okay.
staff jobs. And that's a good point though. No, I was not particularly well known, but I did have jobs. So I had something to rely on.
Right. And I don't know if you realize I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada.
I wondered what accent that was.
No, I don't have an accent, do I?
Oh, you absolutely do.
You're one of the only people that have ever told me that.
Yes, you absolutely have an accent. That's so it's funny. I informed my wife the other day. I told her I mentioned something about her parents' accent, and she was also totally. What are you talking about? They don't have an accent. Totally flabbergasted. So maybe I hear accents where other people don't. But yes, I think that you have this like particularly strong accent.
It's your superpower.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, where's your
I
wife
heard
from?
some. She's from Alaska. Her parents they're from Washington State, but they have what I think of as Midwestern accents. They have a very particular accent, but she
Oh,
doesn't hear it.
oh, how would you describe my accent?
I would describe yours as Canadian.
Okay, because there's Canada's a bit like the States. Depends what area from Canada you are.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I wouldn't be able to distinguish one Canadian accent from another.
I think you would
But I
Newfoundland. They're
Oh,
very,
really? What's theirs
oh,
like?
it's like, hey, there, bye, we're going out fishing, and it's like almost a mix of Scottish and English, and yeah,
Interesting.
it's unusual. I don't know, I
Yeah,
didn't do
yeah.
it any justice, but yeah, they have their own slang and everything. So
Interesting. Well, I've never been there. It looks beautiful. I hope to go someday, but
yeah, I've never been either. But anyway, this has nothing to do with mental health. So talk about the article you wrote that got you canceled.
so this was in 2017. I was a freelance writer for The Stranger, which is sort of still exists, Seattle's alt weekly magazine. And I wrote a piece called The Detransitioners, and it was about people who transition from one gender or sex to the other and then change their mind and transition back. And there was as you would expect, a huge outcry, both online and in person. So I lost a bunch of friends. I was publicly shamed. People put up flyers around town calling me transphobic. They burned stacks of the paper. Someone took like printed out my Twitter avatar and put it in a urinal at a gay bar. So there was a lot of that sort of shit. Um, and the it was socially, it was really difficult. Professionally, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, sort of oddly, because it really raised my profile. And I hadn't, at that point, I was like extremely unknown. And then this thing happened, and people started to notice me, and I got more opportunities. And I actually got a staff job out of it at the one of the only places that I ever wanted to work, which was The Stranger. Um, yeah, so I mean, it was really like emotionally, it was very difficult. Socially, it was very isolating, and really still continues to be, because I lost, I would say, most of my friends after this piece came out, because I am a lesbian. I'd lived in queer circles for my entire adult life, and all of a sudden I was sort of persona non grata. So it sucked, but it also, lots of good has come out of it for me.
So the paper that the article was in actually hired you because you got canceled in a way.
Yeah, and this is before we didn't use the term cancel then.
Oh,
This was
right.
in 2017, so that wasn't that term. I don't think that term really arose until like 2019 or 2020, even 2019 probably, maybe 2020. And yeah, so I think my editors and publisher of the paper sort of appreciated how I handled it,
Hmm.
because I refused to apologize because I hadn't done anything wrong.
Right.
And The Stranger had always been, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I read the article. And it's not like you're critical of anyone. You just
No,
wrote an article and did some research and wrote
right.
wrote what. Oh God, I'm going to get into it now. I don't know. To me, I read the article and it seemed like you were very supportive of everyone and anyone, and
Right,
you just let them have a voice. And yeah,
right, right. But people were very threatened by the article, which was stupid. I think most of the people who were threatened by it didn't actually read it. Um, Yeah, so I got a job out of it, and it really changed the course of my life in many ways. In some ways for the better, and in some ways for the worse.
Right.
Um, yeah.
So you're not with the stranger anymore?
No, I got laid off. I took a voluntary furlough at the beginning of COVID because I sort of thought I could use a break, and I volunteered when the paper is not funded by subscriptions, it's free, so it's funded by ads for events and restaurants and things like that. And when everything started to shut down in March of 2020, I reached out to my boss and I said, if you have to do furloughs, I'll be the first in line, thinking he would never take me up on it. And then I got an email like a half hour later that was like, thank you so much. We'll talk to you in a few weeks. And then a few weeks went by and they laid off everybody, almost everybody. I think there's still a skeleton group of people. And then the layoff turned permanent, but I started a podcast in the meantime. And I, even if they had offered me my job back, I wouldn't have taken it because now I have a podcast and I don't have to go to work every day.
So you make enough money off your podcast?
I make so much more money than I did with a full-time job.
I'm so jealous. I can't make any damn money off this thing.
I mean, it took time. It took time. Not that much time, though. We got really lucky. We got very lucky. So the show was funded on Patreon, and then we moved to Substack. And we used to have ads. We don't do ads anymore. But yes, I make more money than I have any business making. Being sort of a mid-level journalist. It's totally not fair. It's a huge part of it is just luck. But my colleagues at the paper, most of whom, not all of them, but most of whom were kind of mean to me. Like they didn't, they thought that I was transphobic. They were not supportive. And the ones who were left, they were probably 50, 60 hours a week for maybe a sixth of the amount of money that I make. So they weren't canceled, but they also have to still go to a job and make shit money. And I don't. So I'm very lucky.
Damn.
Very lucky. Yeah.
I read an article in the New York Times about you. How impressive, like how maybe not impressive, but how did that feel? Like holy shit, New York Times wrote an article about me?
I didn't feel like much. I mean, I think none of my colleagues at the time even said anything about it. That's sort of the place it was that's what it was like to work there. And that's not it. I did have support among the higher ups. My publisher and my editors, for the most part, were very supportive behind the scenes. But my colleagues were, not all of them, but most of them just sort of ignored me or complained about me. I don't know. It's just a lot of this stuff feels really unreal. I live in an isolated location. So it's not like I was in the New York Times, and it's not like I walked down the street and anybody was like, oh, that was the girl who was in the New York Times. None of my neighbors knew about it. It's very easy to be anonymous where I live. I live in a Navy town. Nobody gives a shit about cancel culture here. My best friend in the neighborhood is an 86-year-old unrepentant racist. He doesn't know what the New York Times is.
So all your friends left you, and now you're stuck with an 87-year-old racist.
Yeah, he's really into guns, and I go over and help him trim his toenails. So that's the downside of cancel culture. What? But I do make a lot of money now. So. It's a real toss-up.
Well, that must be like what kind of toll did that take on your mind? For one, having all your friends, maybe not all your friends, but like your entire community that you are a part of, and then all your coworkers like want nothing to do with you.
It's been really hard, and it like on a day-to-day. At this point, I'm used to it. It's been so long that it's just sort of the way that I live now. But for instance, I spent the winter in North Carolina, where I'm from, and I lived there for most of my adult life.
That's the accent I hear.
No,
you think I have an accent? No, I don't. Sorry. It's lesbian accent.
Yeah, that's it. And podcaster accent. And when I was going home, I reached out to a couple of my old friends to see if, I could see them, to see if they wanted to get together. And I realized they had blocked me on social media. And these are people who I'd been to their weddings, we lived together. And I found out later that other people who I've never met um, have gone around. Basically, my friends, my former friends, have gotten messages from their friends in their community saying, "Why are you friends with this person? Defriend Herzog." And they do it. And that has been, and I know this because one of them told me. And that has been pretty crushing to find out that the people who I spent most of my life being very close to, people I loved, were willing to believe whatever they heard about me. And also and I don't know if they actually believe it or if they just thought like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. But to drop me without a word. And it's not like ghosting. It is like ghosting, but it's not like ghosting somebody after a date. It's abandonment. So that has been immensely difficult. And at the same time, I have all of this professional success that I've never expected to have. And I don't have anyone to celebrate that with. I do. I mean, I have my wife and my family.
Boring.
But it is, yeah, I know. My dog, he doesn't give a shit. So that has been destabilizing and disappointing. And some canceled comedian made a joke about how, when something like this happens, you find out who your real friends are, and who the fuck wants to know who their real friends are. And that has been my experience. And I think this is what, I've talked to a lot of people who've been in similar positions as I have, and people do the same thing. Most people won't say anything. They'll sort of gradually or quietly disappear from your life. A few people will stand up and say something against you, and then a smaller number will stand up for you. And that's been my experience. And I think it's a pretty typical one.
Yeah. You kind of touched on this. I was going to ask, how many of your friends do you think are actually just scared to be friends with you, and that's why they left, because they're scared of getting canceled or some shit?
I think most of them because these are people who, for instance, know what I think because I've told them what I think, and what I think is nothing. I'm not an extremist, I think that probably they're scared, and there's a lot of like bizarre ideology among queer circles. It's been really disappointing, and also realizing that they're just, I think sort of gutless people that I invested my life with gutless people. That also says something about me, I suppose.
Well, some of it's circumstantial.
I mean, most people are.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually totally fine and normal and natural. And it's outliers who are people who are willing to take a sort of moral stand at some cost to themselves.
Yeah. And because you had friends that are gutless, I mean, some of it's circumstantial too. Like, I grew up in a very small town, so it was like I had the option of 4 people to be friends with, around my age. So I was like, it's just circumstantial. It's not like I had a lot of options. So, did you seek help, professional help, or anything like that because of this?
I was seeing a therapist sort of, at the time that the piece came out, and I can't remember why, but I had been on Medicare or Medicaid or whatever it was, because I'd gotten laid off from a staff job before I wrote this piece, and so I had free access to mental health care. And so I briefly was seeing a therapist, and then as soon as I made like $1,500 a month, I lost access to that guy. And he was queer. And one thing, like, I think that I have some like real skepticism of therapy, in part because I know enough about therapists. Like, I've studied a lot about satanic panic and repressed memories, and also gender dysphoria. And I think there can be, if you're not diligent in choosing somebody who is actually very good, my concern is I think that people can go to a therapist and leave worse off than they came. You go and things are going poorly, and then you leave with a diagnosis that may or may not be accurate.
Right. Interesting.
So I have some like real skepticism of therapy. I
About a lot of things,
also
it sounds like.
yeah yeah.
Uh-oh.
Start sounding like a Scientologist. I also, in Seattle at least, like it's hard to find a therapist. It's really hard to find a good therapist. It's not hard to find, like if I wanted to go find like an LGBTQ, I would just call up the LGBTQ center or whatever. I would be able to find a therapist. I don't want an LGBTQ therapist. That is the last sort of therapist I want. I want some therapist who's like a 70-year-old woman who chain smokes and has seen some shit. I don't want a like 25-year-old NB who is going to tell me what's wrong with what's wrong with me. So and I have like, I don't know, like I took sort of the beginning stages, I think last year, of trying to find a therapist. So I went to my doctor and I said, I'm looking for basically a recommendation. And the doctor gave me a prescription for some sort of not even an SSRI, some sort of like I never took it, like Xanax or something like that. And it's like, I don't think that like you're giving like a benzo, like you're giving me an addict. Like I'm coming to you and I'm saying like, I think I would like to talk to somebody, and your response to that is to give me an addictive drug
Here's some
that will be
Oxycontin.
difficult to come off of. Yeah, exactly. So I also have some skepticism of the medical establishment.
Is this because of the article in the backlash, or you were just like that before?
No, I wasn't.
I'm analyzing
as
you
much
now.
like that before.
I'll be your therapist now.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't as much like that before. I did see a therapist for several years in my 20s who I liked. I don't think it really changed anything for me, but I did like her. No, it wasn't that so much as I started reading about satanic panic and repressed memories. And that was my first inkling of like, oh, wait a second, you could go to a therapist and leave convinced that your father raped you and you forgot about it. Well, that seems fucked up. Not that that's a like common experience, but then when I started talking to people, detransitioners, about gender dysphoria, they would some of them told me I would go to the therapist complaining again about something. Maybe it's sexuality, maybe it's depression or whatever, anxiety. And I would leave with a diagnosis, an inappropriate diagnosis. So I think, I don't think that this isn't to say that therapy doesn't help people, but I do think that there are other things that you can do that would probably be in some cases equal
like what?
To therapy. Volunteering at a soup kitchen.
Oh.
Going to do trail maintenance, exercising. I don't do any of this shit. And I think one of my biggest ratios, of all of the times I've gotten ratioed on Twitter, which is a lot, I tweeted something like, I wonder what would happen if people stopped going to therapy and started helping other people. And people did not like that. But I really think that there's something to that. And even something like, you can read studies about this. There's some, things like PTSD, real PTSD, not PTSD because people were mean to you on the internet, but real PTSD, like people who've seen shit in war. Distraction is good for you. It's not actually necessarily good to sit around and perseverate on your problems. What's good is to get out of your head, go horseback riding or whatever. Try to live a full, busy, distracted life so you're not sitting around thinking about yourself. I don't do any of that. I will admit, I don't do any of that. But I think in theory, the way to have a good, healthy life is don't think about yourself that much. Focus on other people, try to help other people, stay really physically busy all of the time. Once again, I don't do that. Don't smoke weed, don't drink, stay off of substances. I don't do that either. But I think that I know the key to a happy life. I just don't follow it at all myself.
Okay, great.
Maybe I should be a therapist.
Yeah. Don't do whatever I'm doing. It's your therapy for people.
Don't have a podcast. That's number one.
But do get canceled. No.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Oh, you made a point and I was, I hate when I do this. I do it every time. Someone says something good and then I have a counter thing and then, anyway. A lot of people do distract themselves and then they're told that you're addicted to, you're overworking, you're addicted to work, you're addicted to exercise, you're distracting yourself from your feelings, and you're distracting yourself from the pain, and you're distracting yourself from the addiction, and you're addicted to not being addicted. So it's funny that you have read studies that say actually no, that's actually pretty good to do that stuff.
To be clear, I haven't actually read the studies. I've read the articles about the studies. And you also, which is the worst sort of reporting, you also cannot believe some high percentage of what you read in the media. So also, I could be bullshit too.
You just read the headline of the article, actually.
I read the headline. I think work sounds like a fantastic addiction compared to actual addictions or exercise. I would love to have those addictions. I don't have those problems. Those are not issues in my life.
Yeah. I guess it depends if you have small children or if you're single or whatever. If you're not, I guess like any addiction, as long as you're not, it's not affecting other people around you and stuff, then I guess it's all cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the question is if something a problem in your life, if it's making you unhappy.
Right. Yeah.
And if working all the time or exercising all the time isn't causing other problems in your life or hurting you.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good way to spend your time to me.
Do you like animals?
I like my dog.
Oh, you do have a dog?
I do.
Okay, yes.
Oh my God, yes, I have. His name is Moose. He's the fucking cutest animal in the world. He's a golden doodle. He and I think that he actually is bad for my mental health.
How so?
Well, so my dad is he's a writer. He studies human animal interactions, and he sent me this blog post. He writes a blog for Psychology Today, and he sent me a post the other day. It was about a study that just came out analyzing mental health, the effects of pets on mental health during pandemic. And there were some counterintuitive findings. And one of the findings was that people who are very intensely connected to their pets showed worse mental health over the course of the pandemic. And that actually makes sense to me because my dog, like I went to a movie last night. I rarely go to movies, but so I was gone for, 2 hours, 2.5 hours or something. And I spent like I spent like half of the movie worried that my house was burning down because my dog was in the house. So there is that level of intensity with a pet where, going out to dinner, taking a trip, going to Hawaii for a week, these things become much more difficult if you're unable to do them because you have this bizarre, unhealthy relationship with your animal, which I think pandemic really facilitated for a lot of people. Before pandemic, my dog, I went to a job. I went into the city every day. I had a commute. I took the ferry. I rode my bike. I was gone for long periods of the day. My dog would get walked once a day with the 10-year-old dog walker would come by and he was fine. And then 3 months after we got him, the pandemic started. And so he went from having a sort of normal dog's life to having an incredibly coddled 1% dog existence where he's always around people. And it has really impacted my life in a lot of ways. When I told you we spent in the winter in North Carolina, we drove there from Seattle. We drove across the country twice so our dog could come with us because we weren't going to put him on a plane. So that's a real quality of life issue. It was incredibly expensive. I spent fucking 2 weeks in a car so that my dog could come. So I do have a pet. We have an unhealthy relationship. I love him so much. And I even like thinking about him dying, which of course he will do in 20 or 25 years. Even thinking about it makes me cry, makes me tear up. So
20 or 25 years?
I'm an optimist.
Okay. I don't know if you can see, I got a tattoo of my doggy right there.
So you get it. Is that a French bulldog?
I don't know. He was like $30 on Kijiji. He passed away last May, but we have another doggy, and I'm getting him on my other arm. And I know what you mean about I've noticed it more in my son. Sorry, we're kind of way off topic. Doesn't matter. We're talking about mental health. My older son, once this guy passed away, his relationship with our other dog became very unhealthy, and he was like super paranoid, and he wanted to be around him all the time. And he's starting to get a little bit better, but so difficult. You guys had a pandemic too?
We did. We did have a pandemic. We were actually first. We had the pandemic first of North America.
Really? Oh, huh.
Yeah, Seattle. Seattle was the
Oh.
first to shut down. Yeah, I no, it's an interesting question. In the pet food industry, the pet products industry, they'll push these studies about how pets make people's lives better. I don't really think that's true. I mean, in some ways, it is true. In some ways, I think my life has improved since Moose came into it. But the reality is, like, our animals live for a very short amount of time. And so you have this like little ticking time bomb.
I know.
That you,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. Because it was horrible when this dog passed away. And I was like, I'm looking at my other dog, like, please don't ever, ever die. And it's like,
Yeah.
I know within like 8 years that's going to happen. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't, but
So-
why do we put ourselves through that?
Because they're so cute.
Right?
Because it is a joy to have an animal in your life, and it feels very special.
So it is good for your mental health then.
I'm not saying it's good for your mental health. I'm saying it's fun and they're cute and cuddly, and I love my fucking dog, but I'm not saying that he's been good for my mental health. Maybe in the sense of like it fetch. Like I play a lot more fetch now than I used to. I'm not sure that fetch is particularly good for my mental health.
Maybe if you're on the other side of it, maybe if he threw the ball
Yeah.
to you, it'd be better.
I have tried to train him. He cannot throw.
You're like the only person I've ever met that's told me that their animal's not good for their mental health, but absolutely adores them. It's not like
Oh, I
because
love
he's
him so
destroying
much.
your house and shitting everywhere. It's because you
no.
love him
He's
too
the-
much.
I do. I love him too much. I do. My way of like dealing with the fact that he's going to die someday is I just won't do any international travel for, until he dies. And then when he dies, like I get to go to the Alps. I can go to Hawaii.
Yeah, that's how I feel about my kids. Sort of.
Exactly.
It's like
Yeah.
they'll go to university and then I can do this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
My kids, I'm. Oh God. Now I'm going to get canceled now because I made a kid joke.
It's worth
It sounds
it.
like you should have been canceled for a lot of other reasons other than
Oh
your
my
article.
God. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was going to happen at some point. Absolutely 100% inevitable.
Well, I'm glad you have a good sense of humor about it.
Thank you.
Have you tried stand-up? Because you're killing me here.
No.
I listened to you on Andrew Gold's thing there, and you were probably the most entertaining guest I heard on his thing.
I would never do stand up for a couple reasons. For one,
Well, shit, talk about being canceled.
yeah. Well, also like my parents love me and I'm well adjusted, so why would I need that? I don't think I would actually be particularly good at it, but also I have stage fright. It wouldn't go very open.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
Not my thing.
someone might walk up and slap you nowadays.
That would be fine. That would be fine.
That'd be good. Okay.
I'd make 7 times as much money as I do now.
Right. So Chris Rock was actually very lucky to be slapped.
He's the victim. It is good to be a victim right now.
Damn. So are you a victim?
Once you I do not feel like a victim. I feel like I don't feel like a victim. I feel like
So they were the victim. Trans people.
no, they're not victims.
See,
Some of
this
them
is
are.
confusing now.
Some of them are. Yeah, I don't feel like a victim. I don't feel canceled because I can still get work. I mean, to me, the canceled it's an unfortunate term in many ways because it's ambiguous. But to me, being truly canceled is somebody who can't find work,
Right.
which is not my problem.
Yeah, I guess yours was a very niche canceling, a very certain group of people. Like I'm assuming even like in the trans community, I'm guessing like the people that quote unquote cancel you are way in the minority.
Oh, for sure.
It's just they could wanted to.
They're loud.
Yeah, that's right. Do you think it would have been like when you wrote the article, it was like instantaneous, right? It wasn't like you hear people being canceled for saying something 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was like 24 hours later. It took about 24 hours for it to sort of percolate through Twitter.
Do you think it would have been worse if it was like something you had done 20 years ago than something or would it be the same?
No. Well, I mean, the difference is that I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
So if this were like, One of the things that annoys me about cancel culture, for lack of a better term, is when somebody dredges something up and judges some past behavior or joke or work hard or whatever by the standards of today.
Yeah.
Nothing can survive that. And that's not how we should judge works of art or pieces of literature or writing or whatever. That's just not, nobody can withstand that, and it's silly. But that's not what happened in this case.
Mm-hmm.
This was a pretty immediate shitstorm.
Mm-hmm. What's some of the, if you don't mind saying, if it's not too traumatic, what's some of the most awful shit abuse you took?
I don't know. I don't remember any of the tweets, anything like that. But there were, there's stickers around Seattle with a picture of my face calling me a Nazi sympathizer.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How was that? Okay.
They used a nice picture though, so that was good.
But
the worst part of it was
even in the same.
It's not. It's the worst part of it was probably a few months after this happened. One of my colleagues at The Stranger was at some public event, and somebody I don't know what the event was, but somebody on stage said something about The Stranger, and everybody started booing. So it was some LGBTQ bullshit. And so this woman who I worked with at the time, she came back to the paper and she said, look, Katie's piece is making it really difficult for me to report on this community. Some members of this community would like to get together and sort of talk to us about how we can better source stories within the community. And one of my editors, the higher ups, were like, don't do it. But I felt like I had to go. So I went, and it was me and 3 other staffers at The Stranger. And it was about maybe 12 trans women, all trans women, no trans men, all trans women. And it turned into a struggle session. It turned into them, like, it started out sort of like, oh, we're going to talk about how The Stranger can like better source stories in the community. But really quickly, someone was like, why are we talking about this? We're here to talk about that fucking article. And then all of these trans women started, snapping, and one started crying and said that that my piece caused suicides. And the worst part of it was not just these trans women, all of whom were significantly larger than me, in my face, snapping and yelling at me. The worst part of it was that the 3 people that I worked with, including my editor at the time, didn't say anything. They sat there, and it was pretty clear whose side they were on. So I left. That was the worst part. That was the worst moment, was my own little struggle session. That was I don't think many people have gotten to go through that experience in their lives.
No.
Yeah.
Do you regret writing that piece?
No, I don't regret it at all. I regret some parts of it. Like, I think that there was a lot of hedging in it, because I went out of my way to be sensitive in a way that I wouldn't do now, because I think it makes the quality of the writing worse. This is this sort of carefulness, this sort of walking on eggshells that I don't think the topic deserves. So there are things I would do differently if I wrote it again. I wouldn't. I thought, if I make sure to mention that the real bad people are the right wingers who are trying to get bathroom bills canceled, then nobody will yell at me. Well, no, it didn't have any fucking impact at all. So I don't need to go into it. I don't need 500 words on why bathroom bills are bad. Just write the fucking story about detransitioners. So there are things I would change if I wrote it today, but I don't regret it. The pieces, I think it will withstand time. One of the people I interviewed has since retransitioned.
So transitioned,
gone kind of nuts.
Detransitioned, then retransitioned.
Retransitioned. Okay. I don't know what's next. But still goes by she, her. So female, still goes by she, her pronouns. But has like been on a tear, like denouncing me, and said that she lied to me when she told me about when I interviewed her for the piece.
Oh,
and so
yes, I read about this.
Yeah. So I would certainly not have interviewed that person again, who seems to think admitting publicly that she lied to me, which I don't even think that she was lying at the time. Somehow makes me look bad. So I would definitely not have used that particular person. And it's been interesting to see. I know some things, some like behind the scenes things that happened after the piece with this person. And so it's been interesting. Basically, there was a breakup, there was a lot of drama within this scene. Not surprising. Queer scenes are very dramatic. Anyway, there's some other shit going on behind the scenes and that I know about. And so this person has been interviewed by a bunch of different outlets, and it's been interesting to see them sort of tell these stories without adding in the extra context. Like, oh, you got dumped by a detransitioner.
Yeah. And here, the weird thing is, you were giving a voice for a community, and then within a community, and then that same community, like, you know what I mean? Like, people that are detransitioned are also a community that need a voice. So it's just, I don't know, the whole thing's bizarre to me. And
it was bizarre.
I don't give a shit what gender you go by or anything. And I even had last year talked to a friend of mine who's now transitioned, and for the podcast for June, the Pride Month. Maybe
Trans Month.
Is it Trans Month as well?
Now it is. No, it's Pride Month, which has quickly become Trans Month. The whole thing is fucking stupid. Oh. I'm just joking.
So maybe I'll wait to air this in June. No.
Yeah, do that. That was another complaint about my piece, was that it came out in June. And so that's, during Pride Month. How could you during Pride Month?
But yeah, oh man. Yeah. I don't want to get in trouble, but I'm so glad I'm straight. It's just so much easier.
Oh yeah. Although being male, I mean.
Well, you mentioned it was all female transitioners, not any male transitioners.
Well,
transition
in this group of in the struggle section, session.
Do you find that the bigger voice is female?
Yes, absolutely. There are some exceptions to that, but yes. I do. Isn't that interesting?
Okay. I'm so scared. Why am I doing this episode? I don't know what to do.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Okay. Your podcast blocked and reported. Like, it takes on other subject matters that are kind of polarizing. Like, do you kind of enjoy poking the bear a bit now? Like,
I don't know that I enjoy it.
I enjoy listening to you do it.
Good. I think that, like, I'm never going to be the best reporter. I'm never going to be the best analyst. Like, I'm not the person to go to if you want, like, excellent analysis on what's happening in Ukraine or Washington, D.C. or anywhere like that, or even, like, local state politics. But I think that the skill that I do have is that I am, not always, but in general, I am stubborn, and I don't like being told what I can't say. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think that people who do have trouble voicing their opinion can sort of rely on me to do it for them. If that makes any sense.
You're sacrificing yourself for those people.
I mean, it's not a sacrifice. I'm not that good of a person.
So you do enjoy it.
I think it's not, but that's the thing. It's not as much as an enjoyment. It also just, part of my personality.
You hear my doggy now?
It's just, I can't hear him.
Good. This mic is working then. Okay. Sorry.
Oh no, there we go.
Okay.
There we go. Heard it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to catch up there.
No, I think it's just part of my personality and knowing where my particular strengths are. And sort of leaning into them. But do I enjoy? I mean, I find conflict stressful, for sure. I don't like arguing with people. I don't like getting I'm in the midst of a stupid fight on Twitter today with conservatives who are like overusing the term grooming. I don't like that. It stresses me out. But I also think that, like, I'm stubborn and I'm not going to shut up. I'm just not.
In some ways, do you know Jordan Peterson?
Oh yeah. One of the stickers around Seattle accuses me of being a Jordan Peterson apologist.
Apologist? You're apologizing for him?
Apparently, well, I said he wasn't a literal Nazi. And that that was enough to make somebody made a sticker that said Katie Herzog is a Jordan Peterson apologist and put it all over Seattle.
I mean, I could take him or leave him, honestly.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting that the really right-wing people, like, cheer him on. But he's actually he's a liberal. Like, he's not hardcore left or hardcore right at all. He's actually somewhere in the middle. But it's like, it's strange in the last 10 years how the left is getting even further left. And I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you could be left and you could still get canceled by the left.
Yeah. And I think this is true on the right as well. And especially in the United States, we're seeing some really draconian, regressive laws being proposed in various conservative states.
God,
I'm
absolutely.
as concerned about that as I am more concerned about that. I think both are really bad. I think extremes on both sides are bad and they feed off of each other. So,
yes.
And you can see this with the trans stuff right now. On the left, you have this encroachment of the spread of not just like basic civil rights issues like access to housing and not being fired from your job and shit like that, but this encroachment into women's rights, where when you talk about things like trans women in sports, you have pediatric transition, youth transition, these incredibly polarizing, unpopular positions that are embraced by many on the left. And in response to that, you have places like Florida, which passed these, or Texas, which passed these really bad draconian bills that criminalize people who, criminalize doctors who prescribe things like puberty blockers, really, really bad shit. And it just gets worse. One side does one thing, the other reacts to it. And this stuff is nonsensical. It is nonsensical. It's making life worse for everybody. There needs to be some happy medium where we can have both, rights for trans people, but also not have trans women in women's sports. There is some balance here that I think can be achieved, but instead we're just getting extremism on both sides and it's making everybody fucking crazy.
Yeah. And again, I think it's like 90% of the people probably are in the moderate.
Yeah.
And it's the 10%, 5% extreme that way and 5% extreme that way that are causing
totally
all the shit, and the media picking up on it because it's good ratings and whatever,
Yeah. And I think this is really going to hurt. I think that gay rights is really going to suffer under this. Gay rights has just over my lifetime, I'm not even 40. And over my lifetime, seeing the acceptance of gay people in society, just a remarkable change. And if you look at polling now, at least in the United States, gay rights is less popular, the various different facets of it, less popular than it was a few years ago. I think this is happening as a direct response to trans activism. I think that this is backsliding. We are seeing backsliding because trans activists have pushed too far. And a lot of people would be offended by that. But I think that you can support common sense policies, people using the bathrooms that they want, people having access to housing, people having access to medical care without pushing it to things like giving children puberty blockers and having trans women on women's sports teams, because when that happens, that's when you see backlash, and it's going to bounce off of gay rights, gay people as well. And I think we're seeing that right now.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
Smart.
So what is the fine line? Like, so I'm a mental health advocate, and I'm very passionate about it. But, so I disagree with a lot of policies, or I think there should be more money spent. But at what point does I've yet to try to cancel someone? You know what I mean? Like, where is that fine line in general, I guess, of being an advocate of something but not taking it?
Yeah. I find myself every day more and more cynical about activism, because I think that in general, yeah, I think that activism only goes one way. It just goes forward, right? Activists are going to activist. And we saw this after, for instance, the success of gay marriage in the United States. After gay marriage was legalized, these activist groups, and there were tons of them, these are big institutions that have a lot of money. They didn't say, "Oh, we won, let's shut down now." They just pivot, right?
Right.
And you see the same thing with feminism. You see the same thing with environmentalism. It's mission creep or concept creep, but I think it's a very natural phenomenon. But I think it's actually bad. It's bad. And not all activists are going to be guilty of this, but a fucking lot of them are.
I've often wondered, like, if the government says, my local government says $20 billion is going to mental health and we're going to do everything Todd wants, if I would still be like, that's not enough, if I would still
Right.
keep going, or he's
Right.
like, the entire government should be made up of depressed people, or
Right.
I don't know. So I
Right.
wonder.
I think that's just a really natural human thing. Writers write, surgeons surgery, activist. You just keep doing your
Activate.
thing. Yeah, the activists activate. And then it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier.
So maybe activism has caused the extreme lefts and rights.
Oh, I think that's true. I absolutely think that's true.
So I should stop activating.
Well, I think you should be aware of it, and be focused and try not to be victim of mission creep, and be clear about what your intentions are. And once you achieve your aims, maybe rethink if you need to keep going or not.
Well, my one goal is to take over the world with depressed people.
A small goal.
And then maybe I'll check it off my list and stop activating then.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. That was one of my funnest interviews, I think, perhaps. Again, I don't necessarily agree with everything you're saying, but you are pretty funny, and I really enjoyed that. So thank you so much for doing this and for talking to me about that, time in your life. And congratulations on all your success. Now, next week, like I said, I'm talking to Rodney Norman. He's the motivational guy on the internet, I guess you could call him. In the coming weeks, I am speaking with Tara Newell, and she is the lady that killed Dirty John. If you have watched the series Dirty John on Netflix, this is her. This is actually her, not actors, and it's not scripted. And I'm also trying to get a young lady named Tio. She's from Australia, and she has autism, and she was on, again, Netflix. I should get sponsored by Netflix. She was on the Netflix show Love on the Spectrum. And so I'm trying to get her. I'm close. She said she would be on, but we're hashing out some dates and stuff. I'm also talking to another stand-up comedian, Big Daddy Taz. He's bipolar, ADHD, a few other things. So we're going to be talking about all that stuff. I'm not going to talk to stand-up comedians every other week. It just happens to be, I was on a stand-up comedian kick for a little bit. So anyway, yeah, that's it. I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe, rate, and review however you are listening to this podcast. It only takes a moment, and it really helps the show out with getting noticed. This episode has been sponsored by Penny University Bookstore, 3104 13th Avenue. Call 639-571-2186 and check out their online bookstore at pennyu.ca. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is supported by Connexus. Wellness, however you define it, is achievable. You don't even need to figure it all out by yourself. Talk to Connexus. They'll give you guidance, motivation, and the push you need to reach your goals. They've got you. They're your financial partner, and they know you can achieve your very best, your financial best. Prove them right. Start right at Connexus Credit Union. The Saskatchewan Podcast Network is also sponsored by Direct West. Are you a business owner looking for new avenues to promote your business? Direct West digital billboards are a great opportunity to highlight a new product, new promotion, or anything else you'd like your customers to know about. You can get local, expert marketing help for your business at directwest.com. If you are having a mental health crisis, please call the Canadian Crisis number at 1-833-456-4566. In Saskatchewan, the mobile crisis team in Prince Albert is 306-764-1011. In Regina, it's 306-525-5333, and in Saskatoon, it's 306-933-6200. Don't forget to check out my children's book, Sometimes Daddy Cries. Sometimes Daddy Cries is told through the eyes of a boy whose father suffers from depression. He sees his dad get sad, rest, and even go to the hospital, all while comparing his father's depression to a physical ailment. Available on Amazon.ca. I'll see you next time. This is Todd Redebaum saying make your beds and take your meds. Bye.